Hi, and thank you for joining me on this session. My name's Paul Tullock. I am an Apple Distinguished Educator class of 2017 and an Apple Professional Learning Specialist. And in this session, I'm going to show and share with you the power of podcasting. Now, the structure of this session is going to be sharing my daughter's journey with podcasting, sharing the story, sharing the process, how she creates that podcast, the impact that it's had, and also showing you the tips and the tricks that she uses to create this podcast. I'm also going to share with you a few other ideas for using podcasting further down the school, with from children as early as 3 years old right the way up through school. Hopefully in this session there will be something that you can take away and something that resonates with you and something that you can try. And I'm really looking forward to sharing my experience of podcasting with you. So I guess the first place to start is why podcasting? Now, podcasting is one of the most popular forms of media, and it's been growing over the past 5 years or so. What I really love about podcasting is it's time efficient. And what I mean by time efficient is you don't have to sit down and set aside some time as if you were watching videos. You can listen to it on the go. In fact, most of my podcasting consumption comes on the form of when I'm driving, when I'm walking my kids to school, when I'm at the shops, when I'm doing jobs and little chores around the house. It's just really easy to pick up and consume. Another reason that I really particularly love podcasting, especially in the classroom, is not everybody's great at writing. And I think in Britain especially over the past 10 years, so over the past 13 years where I've been a primary school teacher from early years right up to year 6, over those past 13 years, the emphasis has always been on writing. And actually, podcasting gives everyone a voice where they can show all of their understanding, their personalities, their passions. They all come out through podcasting. And just to touch on that personal element, I like the connection that you get with a podcaster. So because they're talking to you, you get from the tone of their voice and their personality, the way they come across. And that doesn't come across to me in written work as such. But podcasting allows you to make a connection, a kind of intimate connection with the host or the guest based on their personality. Two of the really important factors are they're very easy to make. They're a lot easier to make than you would think, and they're authentic. And what I mean by authentic is you make a podcast with the idea that somebody listens to it, and it has a purpose, whereas sometimes your work in a classroom does not always reach other audiences, shall we say. So I guess I'll start with where this all came from. So at the end of March 2020, the United Kingdom, all of the schools went into lockdown. And like most schools at the time, about 90% of schools weren't actually ready for this. They didn't have systems in place to distribute work, to receive work, to mark work, to interact. And my daughter's school was no exception. Now, my daughter's school are a fabulous school. I'm not criticising them at all because what they have done for Camille is phenomenal. But when it came, they were caught off the hop, and they basically published a grid on the website where you could choose bits of work and you could either email the work back in or you could drop it in a little post box so staff could see it. It was lovely. There were some really lovely ideas on that grid. And one of the tasks that my daughter had was to write a book review. Now, at the time, Camille was 8, and Camille is a book monster. She has read more books in those, 9 years now than I've read in 40 years on this planet. And that's mainly probably due to my fault being a little bit mischievous when I was younger and looking for other ways of getting into trouble. But Camille can be found with her head in a book, and she is phenomenally passionate about sharing her love of reading and what she's read. She's an incredibly passionate person. She's fun. She's bubbly. She's just wonderful. And I looked at this grid, and one of the grids, as I said, was to write a book review. And I said, great, let's write a book review. Let's share that love of books. And the first thing that she said was, what's the point? Now, I was taken aback by this because I knew that she loved books and I knew that she loves to talk about books. And when I asked her about this, she said, well, what's the point? Who's going to read it? There's going to be one person will read it, nobody else. Nobody, I can't tell anybody in my class about the books that I'm enjoying and that they should read, so what's the point? And I thought at 8 years old, it was a pretty valid point to make, to be honest. If there's no purpose to it and it's not authentic, what is the point? So we kind of, we threw around some ideas. We talked about what we could do. And we reevaluated and we came up with a plan. So, like all good planning stages, you go through various levels and you have to make sure that you've thought about it carefully and everything's in the right place and you're prepared to produce something. Now, I've worked with numerous pupils over the years that think that just because they're an expert in something, they can pick up a phone and they can record themselves a little explanation or sharing their passion and they're a YouTuber, and that's not how it works. So everything that I like to do in the classroom is based around the elements of learning. And if you've not read the Elements of Learning, it's a free book published by Apple and it's based around the work of Dr. Michael Fullan. And there are 5 key elements of learning that you need to consider to really deepen the learning experience. And they are teamwork, communication and creation, personalization of learning, critical thinking, and real-world authentic experiences. So what we decided was, what were we going to do? Well, we were going to share her love of books. And what we decided to do was, in the end, we talked about maybe doing a kind of an ebook through Pages or Book Creator. We talked about using clips to make little videos, but then we decided that podcasting would be the way to go. Now, this was because she had listened to several podcasts. Simon Pyle and the children at Anson Primary School had produced Film Club 5, and she loved listening to Film Club 5. And I'm going to get onto that in a moment. And she'd also listened to History Storytime because history is her favourite topic. So podcasting, she was like, right, I want to do podcasting. Next stage was, who's it for? Who's your audience? So she decided very early on that it was just going to be for children. It could be for teachers and teachers could use it, but she was going to aim it at children, and that's how it was going to be presented. How she was going to do it, what this means is, how are we going to create it, how are we going to publish it, but also how are we going to structure it, how are you going to make it engaging, how are you going to keep your audience coming back. And again, this ticks all of the elements of learning, and it really gave her the ownership. Now, in the initial kind of stages, what we did was, she planned everything out, she wrote it down, and she recorded it. She recorded it and she got some feedback from Grandma, and Grandma was really honest and said, listen, it's fantastic. I love that you're making a podcast, but it's just you reading and maybe your personality doesn't come across. So what we did was we went away and we did a bit of research around some podcasts. And what she really liked about Film Club 5 was there was a segment every week called The 7 Degrees of Bacon. And it was starting off with one film and Kevin Bacon and linking it all the way back round to 7 films and then linking back to the original film. She loved that. It was her favourite bit. And then she listened to History Storytime, and it was a dad and his 2 daughters sharing historical events. And one of the daughters did the scary bits and one of the daughters did the funny bits, and she liked that bit as well. So straight away she was starting to refine how she was going to structure it to make sure that it was unique, and there were little sections and there were little things that were going to make readers come back. Now, I would just like to share with you her podcast, just so you can see her podcast and show you how this is kind of developed. And so if you go into the podcast store, she has a podcast called This Girl Reads. And it started off as one episode. She designed the artwork using Keynote, which we will come on to in a moment. But as you can see, she's done about 18 episodes over the past year, and she's really enjoyed doing them. We had a bit of a gap at the end of March up until this week, because obviously clubs and schools and life got back to normal a little bit. So she was catching up with dancing and cubs and lots of other things. So, but she has caught up with it now. She's been through various iterations and it's changed over time, and I'm going to talk about how that's changed over time. But then she's done the first season and she did Christmas special, and then we did season 2 was World Book Day, and she did World Book Day, a short read every day for a week, which was fantastic because it really got her to think about how she could plan and get this out in a short space of time. And then she's just picked it up again, and she's done some more things there. So I'm going to share with you some of the just a little episode, and hopefully it'll be really easy to see her passion come across in this. So I'm going to mute the microphone just for a moment so there's no echo.
Hello and welcome to This Girl Reads. This is the podcast where we dive into great books. My name is Camille. I am 8. I love books, and this is where I will share the great things I have read. Hello and welcome to another episode of This Girl Reads. I'm Camille, and as usual, I'm joined by my dad, Paul.
Those notes are getting longer, Camille.
I'm struggling for breath.
I have to say, just before. So what you can see is straight away her personality really comes across in that. She's having a lot of fun, and because it's fun, because her personality is coming across, she's got ownership of it. She puts her heart and soul into it. Now, throughout this session, I'm going to talk to you about her process and about how she creates this. So I'm just going to kind of jump into the next little section about the how, first of all. So how, this is how she creates her podcast. Now, I'd never created a podcast at the start of this. I had begun the process with my class about how to create a podcast, and we'd done it the week before schools closed, so we never actually got to record it and publish it. So I leaned on a lot of fantastic people. So just to talk you through the process here, we've got the how. We plan everything and structure it in pages. Now, we did start with notes, but we planned and structured everything in pages because notes was lovely with the check boxes and she could tick it off as she was going, but it meant that she didn't necessarily have a template, so she had to delete everything and start again. We then decided we were going to create it in Garageband and we were going to publish it through Anchor. Now, just a couple of things that I have to mention is I had never produced a podcast before. I'd never really used Garageband in this way before, and there was lots of great people who gave me lots of great advice. Owen Hughes is always a wealth of knowledge around Garageband, and when it came to publishing, Martin Coots was fantastic enough to take me through the steps of getting it onto the Apple podcast store. So without the ADE community, it wouldn't have been as easy, so to speak. So we're just going to jump into looking at the kind of the planning phase of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the Pages app. Now, this was the app that I started to use with my class when we were starting to plan our podcasts out just before lockdown. And I'm just going to open the template that is used by Camille. Now, the reason that we use Pages in the class was we were doing a World War II topic, and we wanted to create a podcast about events in World War II and possibly interview a famous character from World War II or a famous leader. And the idea was that we would use Pages, much in the same way with a template, to plan it out, but we would use the collaboration feature where we would share the link and groups of 4 could work on this together. They could plan the content together. They could plan all the facts, all of the questions that they were going to use. So again, it was going back to those elements of learning about ownership and personalization. And one would be the host, one would be the guest, one in the group would do the recording and the editing, and one would do the artwork, and they'd bring everything together and they'd have a project to share. So that was quite simply just by using the collaboration feature, choosing the link, sharing the link with people and dropping it into our chosen learning management system. Now, this planning document, the reason that we use Pages now is because Camille can delete everything here, so she can tap and she can delete everything, and she just uses the same document over and over again. What you can see is she's kind of structured this document in such a way that it helps her plan it out. Much like any good piece of writing, any good piece of work, it has structure. And she did a lot of research on this, as I said, about segments and working out what information do we need to give, and what will keep her audience coming back. So what we decided to do was we went with introduction. She said what was going to come up in the show and a little bit about the book and where she got the book from. Because sometimes she would get books as gifts, sometimes it would be she worked really hard at school, she had some money to get a book, so she'd always share that, where the books came from, and then a bit more detail about the book. Now this bit more detail about the book was tricky at first because she kept giving away spoilers. So she really had to use her skills of summarising and then giving just enough clues to give the audience some inferences to kind of make up their own mind about what was going to happen. Now the main purpose of this for me was her favourite bit. I loved listening to Sharon why she loved the books and the favourite parts in the books, and she put that in. And then going back to what we said about Anson Primary and the 7 degrees of bacon, she decided that she wanted to have her own little segment. Now, as someone who's worked with pupils for 13 years, emojis are highly important, and I think they often get overlooked at how important they are. An emoji can literally make or break somebody's day. If you write a text message and you stick the wrong emoji on, it changes the tone of everything, and I think emojis have a really big part to play in learning. So Camille decided that she wanted to share 3 emojis that showed how she felt throughout the book. From there, she would say who should read it. We had a little section which started as a bit of fun. It was dad jokes, where I would tell a joke and it would embarrass her. But then as it grew, she started to really enjoy trying to bring me down and say how terrible I was. And then we had this little section at the end, which I'll talk about, where we invited people to kind of leave us messages. So it was really quite simple. Now I've just done the same thing for the Festival of Learning. So over this week, obviously there are some amazing sessions going on, and I decided that I'd make a little mock podcast to show you the process of how to create a podcast really, really easily. So I've just done introduction, the sessions that jumped out to me when I was looking at the calendar. I've put those on there, and what I'm looking forward to, and then I'll do a little snapshot of each kind of session once I've caught up with all those sessions. Now I might publish this, I might not, but for the purposes of this is why I've chosen to do it this way. Again, it's just a Pages template, Pages planning document, and it's really quite simple. So from there, we are going to talk about the design process. So now that you've planned it out, we need a design to go with it first of all. So I'm going to jump out of here now, and I am going to head into Keynote. Now, Keynote is my favourite app in the world. It is unbelievable. The things that you can do with it is phenomenal. But as a design tool, it is priceless. It is so easy to use. There are so many resources, instant alpha, lots of different things. So when you're making your artwork for your podcast, Keynote is the place that I would go to, but I would imagine others would be good as well. Now, just to go back to the podcast and just show you the podcast, this is Camille's artwork, and she made it quite quickly, but she made it very distinctive so it stands out on the podcast store. So she did a lot of research about what podcasts look like and their covers, and she decided she wanted something that expressed her but was child friendly. So she went into Keynote and she made this. Now what you'll notice about it is square, and this is another reason for using Keynote. So I'm going to jump back into Keynote now, and what you'll notice is I've created a mock template here, and the mock template here is square, and I've just brought in some shapes, the Festival of Learning slides, and that's all I've done. Now I'm just going to show you exactly how to create a template the right size, because when you're designing your podcast template, Apple stipulates that, or the podcast store, sorry, it stipulates that it must be between a certain size of 1400 by 1400 or up to a maximum of 3000 by 3000. So I'm going to hit the 3 dots and I'm going to go down to document setup, and you've got your themes, but you can change the slide size. And I'm just going to change it to 16 by 9, and then I'm going to change it to custom to show you. And I can quite simply type in the dimensions that I need and then hit done in the top corner, and that will set the canvas at the right size. From here, you can start creating and start designing and go nuts and really show some personality in there. But for me, that is, I've just created a very quick one, a very kind of easy mock-up, if you will. And I'll come back to why this is important later on, because if you don't want to publish it for the whole world, if you don't want to put it on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, this can then be used to share your podcast in-house. So you could put it on Seesaw, Showbie, Google Classroom, you could tweet it out, you could send it via email, and this is a good way of doing it, which I will come on to later on in the session. So from the designing process, we are now going to have a look at the creating process. Now to create this, we're going to jump into Garageband, and I have got one of my daughter's podcasts open. This is the project. Now it looks really complicated, and you'll notice there are a couple of lines that she's not using. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to we'll just ignore those for now. But what you'll notice is it looks pretty complicated, as in the fact that there are lots of instruments, lots of layers, and lots of tracks. And actually it's a lot easier than it looks, because what you'll notice is these bits here are instruments that play the theme tune and the introduction, and there's one line here which is her speech, her written bits and her vocal bits, and there's a line at the top which plays a little kind of loop in between to break up the segments. Now those loops could easily have been moved down into the same line, but that's the way that she wanted to do it. Now, it does look complicated, but I'm going to take you through from scratch how to create this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out, I'm going to go to a new project, and what you'll notice is in the recent update of Garageband, there's a plus to make a new project, or you can dive straight into voice recording to capture voice. Now, I'm not going to go straight into voice recording because I want to record the theme tune first. That's just a preference. So I'm going to go into create a new project. And what I am going to do is I am going to choose live loops, and I'm going to choose the Solaris track. And the reason that I'm choosing the Solaris track is I like this one. It's the catchiest one for me on the loops section of Garageband. And I'm quite simply going to record. I know exactly what I want to play, and I'm going to record those little sections. Now I'm just going to turn off the microphone so you don't get a lot of echo. But before I do that, what I need to do is I need to make sure that the metronome at the top here, that is turned off. It's not blue. Otherwise, when I record, I'm going to get a tick, 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 tick every 4 beats, and it helps you to keep in time, but I don't want that in my recording. Now, when I hit record, it will play. The first 4 will have the tick, but then it will disappear after that. So I'm just going to mute that microphone, and then I'm going to hit record and choose the loops that I would like to record. And I'm just going to stop it there. And from here, what you notice on the top bar is I have go back to the new to a new project. I can go to instrument choice, or I'm going to go to the project timeline. Now this looks very similar to Camille's early on, and I can pinch in so far, but I can't pinch in and see an entire blank canvas. Now, I'm sure there are ways to do this, and the musical amongst you and the Garageband experts will be able to tell me exactly what I should be doing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the plus at the top, and I'm going to change the section from automatic, and I'm going to give it to about 300, just about 300. I can adjust that later. And what you'll notice is straight away, it's made that timeline. It gives me a bit of room to play with. Now I can listen back to this just to check that it's okay. Again, I'll just turn the microphone. I'm pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to record the introduction, the speaking part. Now, I created that little template before using Pages, and what I'm going to do is I have Pages open on another iPad in front of me, and I am going to use that template. I'm just quite simply going to hit plus to add another layer, another track, and I'm going to scroll until I find the voice recorder, the audio recorder, and then it opens up and I get all of the options here about ins and outs and tones and pitch. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that project timeline. And the reason I'm going back to that project timeline is if you look at the playhead here, the playhead shows you where I will start recording from. Now, I don't want to start recording because if I start recording from here, it's going to have all of those instruments in the background, and I don't want that. I just want my voice so I can manipulate it later if need be. So I'm going to drag the playhead along away from the end of the tracks and just check that it's all from the end of the tracks. And then just for ease, I'm just going to drag that microphone all the way up to the top so it's my top line, the most important line, if you will. And I'm going to drag it back about there, and I'm going to just record my script, so please ignore the cheesy voice, the radio presenter voice, but it's a great idea to get that passion across and that enthusiasm. So I'm just going to mute the microphone just again, just so I can start recording it. Now what I've done there is I've recorded, so I'm going to go back to the timeline here, and there it is at the top. Now I can drag that wherever I need it to be. So if I want it to go there, so I've got my music playing in the background, that's great. Now I'm just going to play it again very quickly. Hello and welcome to the ADE Festival of Learning. I'm Paul Tullock, ADE class of 2017, some would say the greatest class. And it's not bad, there's a slight echo on the voice because of the way that I'm set up recording this, but there's a slight echo on the voice, but the music is too loud. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to this little handle here, and I'm going to drag to the side, and what you notice is I get the volume, so I can adjust the input of each instrument. So I'm going to take those down. I'm going to pull that up a little bit, take that down, and just adjust them all. And then just very quickly, I'm just going to play it again and check. Hello and welcome to the ADE Festival of Learning. I'm Paul Tullock, ADE class of 2017, some would say the greatest class ever, and I'm quite happy with that. Now what I could do is I could drag that out and I only have my voice now, whereas had I have recorded it before, I would have had the tracks in the background. From there, what I would like to do is I would like to put in a little loop to break up some sections. So what I'm going to do is I like this one here. I think it's the voice, the singing voice. So I'm going to copy it and I'm going to come up to the top on this line. I'm going to tap this line here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste it just there, and I'm going to drag it out afterwards. Now, if you notice, I pasted that where the playhead was. I did that wrong. So I'm going to drag it along, and I'm going to tap here, and that's where I'm going to paste it. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I only want one of those. So I'm going to drag that in just to edit it. And remember, you can edit all audio like this, all voice recordings and editing. And I'm just going to take it back to the start, and I'm just going to play it. And that seems like the perfect little introduction, or little breakup, loop in between, if you will. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that over here, just towards the end of my speaking part, and that's my little introduction. Let's play it just to check. So stay tuned. I'm just going to record the next little section. It's just worth noting that. Just make sure that you've got that button. You tapped on this one so it records in the right line. If for example, I was on piano, it would record on piano and I could just drag it up. It's not an issue. But I'm just going to record the next section. So I'm just going to mute my microphone again to stop the echo. So again, I've just recorded that there. I'm going to go back to the project line and you can see it's added it in after there. And I'm going to just take that bar in just a little bit there so I give a bit more room to play. And I'm going to copy that loop again. And I'm going to take that loop right to the end here. And from there, I'm just going to drop that loop there at the end. I'm going to paste it. And we'll just move it ever so slightly back if we can, just so there's no gap in between, and we'll just move the playhead just to check. Share them with you. And there we are. That's the process of creating our podcast. We've got our introduction, we've got our music, we've got our sections of speaking, we've got the loops to break it up, and it really is that simple. Now, I could keep going for every section like that. And again, what I could do is I could record an outro with the same sounds. So I could just highlight everything on here. I just keep moving down. And I've highlighted everything there and I could copy it. And as long as they're all highlighted, I could go to the end and I could paste and it would paste all those layers again, and I could have the same outro and I could record an outro at the end. Really simple. Now, because we've made that podcast, what we need to do is we need to give it a name. So we're going to come out into the projects. We're going to hold our finger down. We're going to rename it. I'll just call it ADE. There it is, it's saved there. And what we're going to do, actually, just before we save it, what you could do is, if that's a template for the same podcast over and over again, you could duplicate that and take out the recording tracks and you've still got the introduction. That's exactly the same. That's the process that is used by Camille. So she duplicates it, and then when she comes to record the new episode, quite simply all she does is she goes to the top line and she takes out the lead vocals and she records again. Very, very simple. So now that we've got that, I'm just going to delete that just so I don't get confused. What we need to do is save it. So I'm going to hit the share button. I'm going to choose song and its highest quality because I'm going to publish it. If you didn't need it high quality, you can choose lower quality. I can add artist, composer, album. I can add a cover image if I want. I don't need to do that because I'm going to add it to the podcast, and I'm going to hit share. And from there, what I'm going to do is I need to hit open in. Now, the reason when I hit open in, and this does take quite a while, by the way, usually when I hit open in, it allows me to save it into files. And if I've got it in files, I can use it in various other places. So just to go through that process again, you hold your finger down, you use the share icon, you then tap in open, you then choose the song, choose the format that you want, the quality that you want, and then you choose open in. And once this is loaded, it should take a moment and it should just upload quite nicely. And there you go. I've got the option now to save it to files. And within my iCloud drive, what I've got is I've created a podcasting folder. Now I could just call it podcasting. I could create the folder there by hitting the icon if I don't have the folder already made. And here I can change the name, and I'm just going to hit save. And what that does is it saves it directly for me. Now I'll show you what you can do with that later on if you don't want to publish it, But for the next step of this, we are going to go into the publishing side and how we can publish this. Now, Anchor is a great app. You can record podcasts in here, but I feel it's easier to do it inside Garageband. But Anchor is a hosting app, and what you can do is you can see it's got all of the episodes there, so you can upload an episode, and from here you can distribute it into many other podcast players. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the process of creating. Now, it's worth noting that in Anchor you can only make one show. What I mean by one show is it has the same artwork and the same name. You can't have multiple shows in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can create this, and you could use this in the classroom. You could create a school account and you could have a school podcast with various different shows in it, or you could create a class account and you could have all the podcasts from your class. It's entirely up to you what you do with it, but there are obviously safeguarding concerns, so check that out and make sure that everything is okay before you go for it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the create section, and like I said, you can record everything here if you wanted to, but because we've already recorded an episode in Garageband, we're just going to go to library and we're going to import. And what we're going to do is we're going to import that ADE Festival of Learning 2 that we've just created. We're going to tap on it and it's going to upload here. And once it's uploaded from here, you simply hit the add button and it drops it into the site. Now, because we've done it all in Garageband, it's only one track. There are other things, so I'm just going to drop it in. There we are. So that little audio recording's in there. I could add multiple tracks in there if I wanted to. And just to show you, you can record directly in. You can record with friends. You can import as we've done. You can put in little voice messages and songs, and I'll talk about these later on. And you can add in sounds and loops. But I just feel it's easier to do inside of GarageBand. So there it is. From here we can edit the episode title, we can give it a description with any links that we need to, and then from there what you would do is you would go into publish. Now, I'm not going to publish this because this would come under my daughter's podcast, but you'll see on the next page you get to put in the title again, the description with any hyperlinks that you want, the season, the episode, and just hit publish now. Now, once it's uploaded into Apple, it generally takes about 5 minutes. Every time you publish it, it's in Apple Podcasts in 5 minutes. Now, before you can do that, what you need to do is you need to create an Apple a podcast account, podcastsconnect.apple.com, and this is where Martin Coots was a great source of help. So thank you, Martin. And what you can do here is you can create your podcast. So you can go to add, and you can create a channel. Now this has just come in, so you can have various podcasts under one channel, or you can create a new show. Now I'm just going to show you. There's Camille's show. You can see the information, and the reason that we're using Anchor is we need an RSS feed to pull it in and make it easier. We've got the artwork, so you can choose the artwork. You've got the frequency update frequency and the categories and everything that's in there, and this is generally all pulled in through Anchor. But what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're just going to show you the process of adding a new show. So I can just go to new show. I can choose a show type. I can upload without an RSS feed. I'll be honest, I've not done this before, but it does just say that it will only be available on Apple Podcasts, or you can add a show with an RSS feed. So if I went to next, you would have to get the RSS feed from Anchor, and it would instantly populate it there for you. So just to show you how to do that, I'm just going to go back into Anchor. I'm going to go to the profile, and I'm going to go to podcast distribution, and you'll see that it's on Spotify. It's on Anchor as well, but down here it says tap to copy your RSS feed. So I would just tap to copy the link and then go straight back into here and choose the link and literally paste it from there, and it would pull that in from Anchor, and it would pull in all of the artwork and all of the setup. Now, you don't need to do that, but that is it's that simple. It's really easy to do. But please check, make sure that safeguarding issues are all thought of, and that you're happy to publish this work, and you have the permission from the learners and parents to publish this work as well. So creating a podcast is super simple. It's really, really easy to do. I'd just like to talk about maybe the impact that it's had. So the impact that it's had on my daughter and my family is she's just grown in confidence. As you can probably tell from that little snippet that I paid you, she has fun. She loves it. Her passion comes across, and it's fantastic. And she loves to plan it out and sit down and do it. And also, you'll notice we did a Christmas episode, and her brother Sebastian, who was 6 at the time, he was like, "What's this podcasting about?" And he was a guest on the podcast, which was brilliant. It was a real family affair. So we recorded ones about our favourite stories, our favourite Christmas stories, and he loved it. And he's been talking about ever since that he'd like to have his own podcast. He's even got the title Sebastian Speaks, and he'd like to share just a 5-minute quick overview of things that he's really interested in, such as Titanic. He's a huge football fan and he loves trains, but he hasn't quite decided on a theme yet. So we'll wait, and maybe at the start of next school year we can do that. But just the impact that it's had on Camille, she's so much more confident. She was a very social person anyway, but her confidence has grown, and she's a real natural when it comes to presenting and acting now. And it's just been really good for her to focus and actually give her some skills and really push that passion and give it some authentic learning. So where it becomes authentic, we've had so much feedback. So we have had tweets from all of the authors that we have reviewed. They have got back to her. They have left wonderful comments about how they've really enjoyed it. Some of them have even left voicemails on her podcast. And what I will do is I'll show you that now very quickly. Is I'm going to jump back into the publishing side of it. And if we jump into Anchor again, and we jump into the publishing side of it, when we go to the create section, what you'll notice is some people have left us some voice messages. So some people have just tweeted or direct messaged me because we shared them on Twitter, but some people have left voice messages. So for example, this one here was by the author from Pickle Witch, one of the books that she loved.
Hello, this is a message for Camille and obviously her dad Paul, who was incredibly funny. I loved your review. It was absolutely brilliant. I'd love to hear more that you do. That's great. Pickle Witch is made up about it. Very, very pleased indeed. Jack's just very pleased that anybody's noticed him at all. Happy Halloween. Have a wonderful time. And, oh my goodness, maybe one day we'll meet each other. I'd like that. I think what you're doing is fantastic. Take care. Bye-bye.
So just that impact there that she's had, she's read a book by somebody that she admires and she loves. She shared that, and then the authors got back to her and said some lovely things. And obviously from there, what has happened as well is from there on those tweets that we showed before, those tweets about the impact, some publishers have sent her books and she's reviewing and she's connecting with people that she obviously admires and is inspired by. So it has had real impact, and it just makes that learning experience so authentic. What I'd like to do is just give you some quick tips as well to take away to possibly use in the classroom. And I'm just going to jump into now showing you something that I've used recently with reception children, so age 4. So obviously podcasting can be quite complicated, and Garageband can be quite complicated, but it doesn't have to be as complicated with soundtracks. Podcasting can just be sharing a story, sharing an interview, and one of my favourite apps is Keezy. Now, if you've not seen Keezy before, what Keezy is it's a soundboard app, and I've used this in early years quite a bit. And what you'll notice is I'm just going to open one up and say welcome to Keezy, and it's just it's recordings, it's buttons that you can and what I've done is you can also record your own. So what we're going to do is we are going to add our own, and you'll notice the buttons turn to microphone. So one of the things that I've done lately is I've worked with a class and we've been learning about the Gruffalo, and they interviewed the characters. So I'll just do this, ignore the crazy mouse voice. But so Mouse, how did you feel when you heard that the Gruffalo was real? Were you scared? And then quite simply I could play it back. So Mouse, how did you feel when you heard that the Gruffalo was real? Were you scared? I must admit I was a bit shocked at first. I thought it was just a big myth and people were just pulling my leg. But then I had an idea to use it to my advantage. Apologies about that. But you can see it brings that storytelling to life. And from there, what you could quite easily do is you could... I must admit I was a bit shocked at first. I thought it was just a big myth and people were just pulling my leg. But then I had an idea to use it to my advantage. So what you could do, sorry about making you listen to that twice, but what you could do is you could screen record that, or quite simply, you could go into the record mode in Keezy, tap record, and then it's recording everything now, so when the sound buttons are pressed... So Mouse, how did you feel when you heard that the Gruffalo was real? Were you scared? I must admit I was a bit shocked at first. I thought it was just a big myth and people were just pulling my leg, but then I had an idea to use it to my advantage. Quite simply hit stop, give it a title. We'll just call it very simply Gruffalo. Let's call it Mouse, actually. We'll just call it Mouse. And then from there we can share it. And we can save it into files. And we'll just pop it in that podcasting one. And really simple, we've saved our own little mini podcast. And when I came back to earlier on, and if you don't want to kind of publish it, and I talked about you could use Keynote, if you quite simply go into the Keynote that we had before, so I'm just going to jump back into that Keynote. And if we go into that Keynote that we had before, if I didn't want to publish this for everybody, but I wanted to share it with certain people, Keynote is, again, just going back to how fantastic Keynote is I'm just going to go to add. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert from. And because I'd saved that ADE Festival of Learning, here it is. And when it's put a sound button in, and the sound button will just play that part of the podcast that we saved. Now, if I tapped on it, it would play. Hello and welcome to the ADE. And there's that podcast over the top of some artwork. Take this one step further. Hit 3 dots. Export that as a movie. And just export it there. Choose where you'd like to save it. I am going to save it now. I'm going to save video, and that will now be in my camera roll. So when I go to photos now at the top, and it opens up, you can see there it is. It's saved there. And if I play it. Hello and welcome to the ADE Festival of Learning. I'm Paul Tullock. ADE class of 2017, some would say the greatest class ever, and you can see there it is ready to go. So I'd just like to say podcasting can be really simple, but it's really powerful, and it's a great thing to get pupils involved with. I'd just like to say a big thank you for joining me, and it's been a real pleasure sharing my daughter's journey and the impact that it's had on her, but also some little tips to share with you for in the classroom. If you would like to ask any questions, you can catch me on Twitter at Mr. Tullock, or you can email me direct at paul.tullock@jigsaw24.com. And thank you for watching, and I will see you again soon.